Forbes Breaking News. Today I'm here with Rep. Gabe Vasquez of New Mexico's 2nd District. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Cat.
Of course. So I just want to dive right in. You represent a very large border district in New Mexico. So what is the biggest issue facing your community? Are your constituents talking to you about?
Yeah, I think like many places in the United States, folks are concerned about the economy. They're really, truly concerned about their pocketbook, and being able to live the dream in this country, I think, is something that is slipping away from many of our families, making it into the middle, having the opportunity to live in a safe neighborhood, to be able to afford a home, to be able to buy health care, to be able to put gas in their car. Those are the top things that I hear about in my district.
And what about as it relates to the border?
Well, I think I'm uniquely positioned as a member of Congress in Washington, D.C., coming from Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua. I actually grew up on the other side of the border wall, but I did have the privilege of being an American citizen. And I think I'm uniquely positioned to help lead conversations about everything related to border security and immigration, especially with our Democratic caucus. So right now, obviously, we have some challenges to face in this country when it comes to the influx of drugs into our country, into our neighborhoods. And, as elected officials, it's really our primary responsibility, and really for government in general, is to protect the well-being of our communities and our people. So poverty is a big issue. Right now, we are facing a crisis of addiction to fentanyl, and we are seeing obviously that this drug is being imported through our ports of entry, and that is a huge topic for folks in our border communities in terms of being able to stop that flow of fentanyl and taking some concrete steps to prevent the dangerous narcotics that are coming across our border. So I've been really focused on meeting folks on the ground, including Border Patrol, including local sheriffs, including our officials at the Customs and Border Protection Agency, to figure out how we can best tackle this issue.
Right. Of course, it makes sense. So you're talking about the fentanyl crisis because, as you know, you're calling for more funding for Homeland Security and Border Patrol in a letter that you've written to the House Appropriations Committee. So what specifically is in your proposal?
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier this year, I led a letter urging Speaker Kevin McCarthy to bring, emergency legislation up for a vote in Congress so that we can address this crisis together. The letter requests $4 billion to support and streamline immigration processes. It also calls for about $800 million to address the flow of illicit fentanyl into the country. My letter to Speaker McCarthy calls for additional critical funding that happens right here in my district. I mentioned before that in the Santa Teresa Port of Entry, we now have technology to be able to scan 100% of commercial cargo, which is where most of the fentanyl in this country comes through. It comes through our ports of entry. And so we need to be able to have both the resources with technology and the resource with additional funding for Customs and Border Protection agents to be able to operate the technology to inspect these shipments that oftentimes are carrying fentanyl or other illicit goods. So that's what my letter calls for. Over 20 Democrats that are part of the New Democratic Coalition have signed on to it. I've spoken with many of my Republican colleagues about this while I've been in Washington, D.C., and they all agree that this is a problem that we desperately need to take care of. And so this letter is really an opportunity for Republicans to step up to the plate, work with Democrats, work with border legislators just like myself to better understand how we can help stop the flow of fentanyl, not make this a political issue, but actually address what is happening in our communities.
Right. So you've mentioned that there is some support, bipartisan support from both Democrats and Republicans. So as you hope to make progress with your proposal and just on border topics in general, where do you feel like there is collaboration with House Republicans?
Well, look, I serve on the committee, serve on a special task force that is looking at the reform of the H-2A visa program, which actually supports American farms in places like New Mexico and Arizona and Texas, all over the border, but as well as the country, to try to figure out how we can have a safe food system in this country that we are getting some support from Republicans on. I think we all agree that we need the labor to be able to have food security in this country. And so reforming the H-2A visa program is something that both Republicans and Democrats are working jointly on as part of a special task force in the Agriculture Committee. I think that is a sign of progress, and I think there's some really good members on there who are willing to talk about that. Now, when it comes to fentanyl and border security, I think one thing we can agree on as both Republicans and Democrats is that we need more technology at the border. We've and I've seen it here in my own district in New Mexico, representing 180 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border, that a border wall or a border barrier is not the most effective tool for keeping the bad things out of this country, whether it's human trafficking or drugs. I've talked to Border Patrol sector chiefs all across the border who all agree that we need more funding for technology. We need to be able to better understand what is coming through our ports of entry. And of course, we need to help solve this crisis that is at the border currently as it pertains to these illicit substances that are coming in. So I'm hopeful that Republicans will come to the table and work with me and other Democrats to actually solve this issue and not just make it a political issue.